All right, today we're diving into a really beautiful and profound poem, Thomas Gray's Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard. Now, this poem tackles a huge question, one we all think about, right? What makes a life valuable? Is it all about being famous and remembered, or is there a kind of quiet dignity in being, well, unknown? Let's get into it.
And right from the start, you can just feel the atmosphere Gray is creating. It's not just describing a graveyard, is it? It feels like you're stepping into another world, a place where all the noise and rush just falls away. It's about memory and time, and what's left when everything else is gone.
Okay, so to really get this poem, we have to start exactly where Gray starts, at the end of the day. The whole beginning is about setting this incredibly specific mood, and you'll see how that mood perfectly reflects the big ideas he's about to explore.
So the first thing he gives us is a sound. And think about what kind of sound it is. It's the curfew bell. It's not some sharp, alarming ring. It's this deep, kind of melancholy toll that echoes across the valley. It's literally the sound of the day officially ending.
And then the focus shifts to the natural world. You see the cattle just sort of drifting home. He uses the word lowing, which is such a gentle sound. They're not being hurried along, they're just winding down, adding to this feeling of a slow, peaceful conclusion to the day.
And finally, we see the last human out in the fields, the plowman. He's tired, he's walking slowly, and as he heads home, he's basically handing the world over to darkness and solitude. And it's in that solitude, that quiet, that the poet is left alone with his thoughts and with the dead.
So you see what he's doing here, right? All these little details, the bell, the cattle, the plowman, they all come together to create this incredible symbol. Twilight isn't just about the sun going down. For Gray, it's a metaphor for the transition from life, which is the busy day, to death, the quiet of the night. It's not a violent end, but a gentle fading away, and that sets the entire tone for the poem.
Okay, so the scene is set. It's quiet, it's dark, and the living world has gone to sleep. Now, the poet turns his attention from the world he just described to the silent community right there at his feet.
And who is he thinking about? Not kings, not famous heroes. He's thinking about the rude forefathers of the hamlet. Now, rude here doesn't mean impolite. It means simple, uneducated. These are villagers whose entire lives played out right here, completely off the radar of the big, important world.
But here's the thing. He doesn't dismiss them as nobodies. Not at all. Instead, he starts to imagine what their lives were really like. He pictures them waking up at dawn, working hard all day, finding joy in small family moments. He gives them a rich, full humanity that history books would never record. He's reminding us that every single one of these quiet lives was packed with meaning.
And that brings us to the absolute core question of the poem. It's a question that just hangs in the air. Suddenly, this graveyard isn't just a place where things end. It's like a library of unwritten books, a museum of lost potential. And the question is just, what could have been? What greatness lies buried here, completely unseen?
Now, that question opens up this really fascinating philosophical debate right in the middle of the poem. Gray starts to weigh two very different kinds of lives against each other, the life of fame and glory versus the life of quiet, unseen grace. He starts wondering, could one of these villagers have had the makings of a great leader, like Oliver Cromwell, or maybe a poet with the genius of John Milton? These famous names represent huge potential. But maybe for these people, that potential was just locked away by their circumstances. Poverty, a lack of education, it kept their talents hidden from the world.
But then, and this is so important, Gray flips the script. He says, hold on a minute, is being unknown really such a bad thing? He argues that obscurity has its own kind of grace. Think about it. These villagers were spared the temptations that come with power and ambition. By never chasing glory, they also never had to deal with the guilt that can come from it. There's a real virtue, a real purity in their simple, unnoticed lives. And you have to understand, this isn't just some abstract philosophical game for the poet. He's not just thinking about other people. Eventually, he turns this whole meditation inward. He starts asking these exact same questions about his own life and his own death.
So he paints this picture of how a local villager might remember him after he's gone. And what's that memory? It's not of a famous poet or a brilliant man. Nope. He'll be remembered as that quiet guy, a bit solitary, always wandering around at dawn or twilight, just lost in thought.
a bit melancholic maybe. He's totally embracing a simple, personal legacy over a public one.
And then he writes his own epitaph, what he wants on his tombstone. And it's so telling. There are no grand achievements listed. It just describes a man who loved knowledge, who felt things deeply, and who ultimately put his trust in a higher power. He finds his own meaning not in what the world thinks of him, but in the sincerity of who he was on the inside.
So when you pull it all together, the poem leaves us with this powerful, lingering truth. And it's a message that feels maybe even more important today than it did back in the 18th century.
And here it is. The real value of a life isn't measured in fame or awards or how many people know your name. It's found in the quiet dignity of just living, in feeling things, in being present, in the small, unseen moments. That's where the real worth lies, not in the monuments people might build for you.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We live in a world that is constantly shouting for our attention, right? A world obsessed with being seen, with going viral. Gray's poem asks us to do the opposite. It asks, in a world that shouts, what kind of power, what kind of wisdom can we find just by listening to the silence?